Barack Obama graduated from Harvard Law School in 1991. That's not where Evan Thomas is teaching. It's a regular school, right, Charles? Down at Kennedy School. Oh, the Kennedy School.
Yeah.
Anyway, Senator-elect Obama served as the first African-American president of the Harvard Law Review. He's worked as a community organizer, civil rights attorney, law professor. Since 1997, he has represented parts of Chicago's South Side in the Illinois General Assembly, and he's currently the Democratic nominee to become the junior U.S. Senator from Illinois. He'll take office on January 20th, Charles?
I believe so, I am.
He lives in Chicago with his wife, Michelle, and their daughters. Please welcome to the Irish Morning program, Senator-elect Barack Obama. Good morning. I'll just call you Senator Obama. It's about a month away, a month and a half, right?
That's not too bad.
How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
You're quite welcome, sir. Now,
and I have to tell you that my daughter's godmother loves you, worships this show. So she's probably listening right now. I want to make sure to let her know that I appreciate her.
That is disturbing.
Yeah.
It's disappointing.
It's disappointing, actually. Well, no, but thank you. Who is the godmother?
You know, her name is Kay Wilson, and she lives in Olympia Field, and she listens to you religiously every day. That's what she told me.
Well, God bless her.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when this book first came out, Dreams from My Father, which I read 10 years ago, do you believe that?
No. It hit the bargain table pretty quick.
Well, that's my plan was to tell you I had read it 10 years ago, and then I forgot what was in it or whatever, because you have to read a lot.
Yeah.
But that's not what happened, sir. So.
No, I understand.
Tell me about it.
Well, about 10 years ago after I got out of law school, publishers came and asked me if I'd be interested in writing a book about my life. And I said, well, my life's not that interesting, but my family's life's interesting, so let me give a shot at that, because my father was from Kenya and my mother was from Kansas, and they met in Hawaii, and the whole story of how they came together and fell apart, I think, spoke a little bit about issues of race and class in this country, and how I sorted it through. So I wrote the book. It got nice reviews and didn't get too much attention. And just a little bit of luck. And during this summer, when I spoke at the Democratic National Convention, some people took notice of it, and the publishers decided to reissue it. And so here we are, and it's doing quite well.
Why did your father leave Kenya and go to Hawaii?
Well, he was part of that first generation of foreign students from Africa and from Asia, all around the world, who were able to get scholarships to come to the United States and get educated. And so he came to study. And my mother, who was coming from Kansas, she had traveled with her parents out to Hawaii in search of opportunity, and they met at the university there and thought that they could make a go of it. It was still tough back in 1961 for a black African and a white American to get together, even in Hawaii.
It's still tough if you want to get together on Monday Night Football.
Absolutely, yeah. Actually, my father, I think, was a little smarter than Terrell, but not as good a football player.
Oh, and she was going to school there as well?
She was going to school there as well. Okay. And, so they had a difficult time. And so he went back to Kenya, and he ended up being sort of a tragic figure. He did very well. He went to Harvard and got his degree and went back and started working for the government, and then got caught up in some of the difficulties of, tribalism and nepotism and all the stuff that goes on, not only in Kenya, but in a lot of underdeveloped countries. And so the book ends with me going back to Kenya to retrace his life and to find out what exactly that was about.
Well, your relationship with him was what now?
What was that?
What was your relationship with him?
Well, I didn't get a chance to know him very well. So I grew up a lot with my mother and my grandparents, and part of what the book is about, I think, is talking about something that happened to me that's common to a lot of young kids, especially African American kids, which is not knowing your father and trying to figure out what that means and how you're supposed to act as a man and the struggles that are involved in that.
And he died when?
Well, he died when I was about 20 years old, about 23 years ago, and I never really got to know him very well, and I think that ended up having an impact on how I, acted as a teenager. I ended up acting pretty, got into a lot of trouble, experimented with drugs.
What?
Didn't worry about school. And,
I had two good parents, and I did all that.
Well,
you had two. I mean, I had two parents who stayed together, and I still did all that stuff. And I had no excuse, did I?
Well, I mean, part of it was that that's what young men go through. But I think it ends up being, I think I pushed the envelope a little harder.
Did your mother remarry?
She did remarry, and I ended up going to Asia because the person she remarried, he was from Indonesia. And so I lived in Jakarta for 5 years and then moved back. So I've got, when my family gets together, you've got, it looks like the United Nations. I've got a sister who's half Kenyan. I've got, it's all mixed up. That's why I had to write the book, because when people see my family, they say, "What the heck is going on here?"
More confused than Tiger Woods.
That's
right?
exactly right. So
we're talking with Senator-elect Barack Obama, whose book has been reissued, "Dreams from My Father," which, as Senator Obama pointed out, is doing pretty well. It's described as a story of race and inheritance. Why the word inheritance?
Well, because part of what I wanted to write about was the sense of how, parents pass on, both good and bad to their kids. And, we're all part of, an extended story going back to our parents and our grandparents. And it's important, I think. One of the things that I realized was that it was important to get a sense of what your parents' stories were and your grandparents' stories were. You didn't just land here, without any connection to those things. And I think that's true a lot of times for those of us in America. We like to create ourselves, out of whole cloth and not think about history too much. But it's helpful once in a while to get a sense of what came before us.
And then when did you first run for office?
What happened was I went to school here at Columbia and got out, worked for a year for a business magazine to pay off my student loans, and then decided I wanted to work in low-income neighborhoods. So I worked in Harlem for about 6 months as a director of a small program there, and then got hired by a group of churches out in the far south side to help guys who had been laid off of steel plants to find jobs. So moved out to Chicago, worked there for 3 years, went back to law school, got my degree, organized a big voter registration project to help Bill Clinton get elected in 92, and started teaching at the University of Chicago Law School. Finally, in 1996, the seat that I occupy opened up, and some people asked me if I wanted to run, and did, and turned out pretty well from my perspective, but not from my wife's. I'm still not sure she voted for me.
I don't have a Teresa Hines thing here going on.
No, she's just a real sensible South Side girl, and explain to me again why you want to do this politics thing.
It's most encouraging about your message. Not most encouraging, but an interesting aspect is I've actually talked to someone who made a genuine effort to pay off their student loan.
Yeah, I did. So, but that's back when you could afford it. Kids these days, they come out, they've got $100,000 in debt. I mean, back when I was going to school, you came out, you had a few $1,000. You could pay it off in a year.
So what do you expect to find when you walk into the Senate? It's controlled by the Republicans because we have a Republican president, and the House controlled by Republicans, and
well, I think they're going to make me sharpen the pencils and sweep the floors. I ranked 99th in seniority, so I think it's going to be a tough go for Democrats generally. But the one thing that I've learned is these things go in cycles. When I came into the state legislature in Illinois, we were in the minority. I was in the minority for 6 years and in the majority for 2 years. And the first 6 years were tough. If somebody gives you a choice between being in power and not being in power, choose power. It's more fun.
My friend Harold Ford Jr. He's been on the show. I don't know how many times.
Absolutely.
Gets irritable with me when I make this observation. But even though you're 99th in the Senate, you're still ahead of him. I'd like to point that out.
Well, Harold is a good friend, and it's even more frustrating in the House, because in the House, when you're in the minority, not only do you not set the agenda, but you can't even stop anything. At least in the Senate, you have a little bit of leverage. They still need your votes occasionally to make things go. But my job, I think, right now is to make sure for the next year and a half that I'm setting up a good constituent service office, and the people in Illinois know what I'm about, and that I'm taking care of the details of being senator. And to spend some time just helping the Democrats, I think about their message, make sure that they're projecting a message of change that makes sense to people and that connects with ordinary folks. I think that there's a perception coming out of this election, and I think this dates back for a while, that the Democrats are out of touch. And, in my campaign in Illinois, folks didn't feel that, which is why, we ended up getting 70% of the vote.
You were running against a psychopath.
Well, that
in my judgment,
that helped. I mean, the mothership finally came to get him. And, we don't know where he is right now.
Of course, as I pointed out to Congressman Ford, in my view, there are three kinds of people in the House: people who want to be in the Senate, people with stunningly low self-esteem, or criminals. So. We've got that. I mean, I've really just done everything I can to try to help to get him out of that situation.
Well, I think Harold's gearing up for his race. And,
I hope so.
And I will, I will do anything I can to help him and to help, other young, talented folks, get into politics. One of the reasons I wrote the book was, I also wanted to give young people some sense of why they might want to get involved in something other than Wall Street. Nothing wrong with Wall Street, and nothing wrong with making money in business. But for those who are thinking about a career in public service or working in communities, it can be pretty rewarding. And I think one of the problems we have in our government right now is that some of the most talented young people don't get involved in it because society doesn't really respect it much.
Speaking of young people, do you, we're talking about Senator-elect Barack Obama from Illinois, do you share the views expressed by Bill Cosby in that Mr. Cosby said that the blacks were squandering the accomplishments of the 60s, that they either can't or don't choose to speak the King's English, that rap music sends a bad message, and you're aware of that.
Well, no, I mean, the one of the lines that people quote most from my speech during the Democratic keynote was, my assessment that we're not going to solve educational problems in the inner city just by money. That parents have to parent and teachers have to teach, and we've got to get over this notion that somehow, if a black kid picks up a book and starts reading, he's acting white. I think Cosby spoke a powerful truth. I think that the way he said it might, I think he was trying to shock and sort of wake people up. A lot of these young people need, along with a jolt, and they need an embrace. And so I'd say not only that they have to start working harder, and their parents have to raise them, with a respect for education, but we also have to encourage them as well. and give them some sense of, I think a lot of them reject education because they start off their first day of school already behind. So many kids go, they don't have parents in the home who are reading to them. They're not getting the kinds of support that they need, and they get to school and they start figuring out, this isn't something I'm good at, and so they decide to reject it completely. And we all have to take some responsibility, I think, to get them a little more focused and a little more disciplined.
The phrase black kids picking up a book and being characterized as acting white reminds me, though, that there are an enormous number of white kids who emulate black kids.
That's the irony, isn't it? I mean, there's that saying that when America gets a cold, black America gets pneumonia. And I think, most of these problems are problems with the whole culture, right? I mean, our kids watch too much TV generally, but black kids watch the most TV. Our kids are playing too many video games, but black kids play the most. Our kids all are getting out of shape because they're sitting around and then don't get any exercise. But black kids suffer the highest levels of obesity. So, on a whole host of these, issues, they're broader issues. I mean, America generally has a certain level of disrespect for education, is anti-intellectual, starting with the White House. And I just think that the African American community suffers from it the worst and can least afford it because minority communities, low income communities, they've whether fair or not, have to work harder to dig themselves out of a hole, and that means that parents, even if they themselves don't have an education, have to say to their kids, "This is the way you're going to climb out."
Do you support school vouchers and giving parents money to put kids in schools outside of the public school system?
I haven't been persuaded, and I have not seen from the experiments they've got in Milwaukee that vouchers show a significant improvement. But what I'm really big on are charters, ways to create competition within the public school systems. I mean, 90% of the kids are going to be going to public schools. 10% are going to go to private schools. So we've got to figure out how to make the 90% work. And, the charter school movement that allows kids and teachers and parents to go to schools that are outside the regular bureaucracy, I think make a lot of sense. The one thing I know is that you can't, in many city schools, you can't defend the status quo. Kids aren't learning, and they're coming out of there ill-equipped to compete.
Finally, digressing here, some sort of dramatically, what did you make of the opening of Monday Night Football with that Nicolette Sheridan, a woman from Desperate Housewives, and Terrell Owens?
The first thing I'd notice is that every time folks get real outraged about these things, you notice how they replay it every 15 minutes on CNN and
MSNBC. Yeah, well, we got to make sure. We want to make sure we're offended, Senator.
I mean, it always cracks me up how in the midst of this outrage, folks just keep on running these things. I think it was a matter of context. I think that if that same scene was shown during Desperate Housewives, nobody would have cared. I mean, I'm assuming that's what that show is about. But I think that having it during football is, football is one of those last remaining places where, I sit down with my 6-year-old daughter and we're watching football, and and I don't want to have to explain. I don't think that it was the worst thing that's been on television, but I just assume not have to explain to my daughter why, this woman is in a locker room naked. Yeah.
Well, you know what I thought? Now, this may be idiotic, but here's what I thought was interesting and probably good. And that was that the outcry, at least that I heard, was based on the representation of some sort of sexual act. Not that it was a white woman jumping into the arms of a black man, which I see. I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but I actually see as progress.
Well, I understand what you're saying. I mean, some of those taboos are breaking down, and I think that the truth is on racial issues, and I wrote, in my book, I wrote a new preface this time for the reissue of the book, and I said that the nature of race in this country is, I think, evolving and changing. I think that the American people at their core are decent people, and I think that they want to do the right thing. And I think that what we confront now in terms of racial problems have more to do with the structural issues of poverty and
1430 WCLT, your hometown news and information station. With your satellite